Good afternoon, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk to you about our proposal to evaluate the Olympic Torch Relay Initiative. Again, my name is Sharon Margison. I'm the project leader. I have a background in communications, information research, and project management. For all of us, you will find bios in the pamphlet that we provided. Eugenia is our logic model expert, and Denise is our data analysis specialist, and Catherine is our design specialist. We have a very packed agenda, as you can see, so just move right into it. First of all, a key aspect of meeting your needs is to really understand the stakeholder information needs, and that informs the evaluation matrix, the questions that need to be asked, the data collection methods. That, of course, then feeds into tailoring the design so that you know you're getting quality data, you're doing the proper data quality control methods, and that then leads to evidence-based conclusions that can then support effective decisions. The Olympic Torch Relay Initiative passed through over 1,000 communities to generated engagement in the Olympics and communities. It was to connect Canadians, involve community participation and celebrations, provide exposure to individual Canadians, artists, creators, other Canadians of important achievements, and also youth participation, of course. The evaluation, the main focus is summative. It's focusing on what were the outcomes, did we achieve what was intended, did we contribute to the 2010 Olympic goals and objectives, and what were the long-term legacies, the value for money invested. There is also a process component. Was the initiative implemented as planned? The primary users of the evaluation are federal partners and organizers, specifically Canadian Heritage, the Vancouver Olympic Committee, and the Ministry of State. Then another key group are the Olympic committees. They're going to be able to take the information that's gathered in this evaluation and see how it can pertain to future evaluations. And then there are the beneficiaries, the celebration communities, and the not-for-profit organizations that got to participate in this event. What's the impact on those communities? What's been the impact on youth who were able to participate? What were the legacies, the value for money invested? Also, what you need to look at are what are the intended outcomes. And of course, then the partners who provided funding support, Coca-Cola and the Royal Bank of Canada, they'll have a strong interest in what was achieved. Regina.
Thank you, Sharon. We're now going to talk about the logic model because, as you all know, understanding the program or initiative under evaluation is of paramount importance for both the evaluative processes and the outcome of the evaluation, and particularly to ensure that the findings and the recommendations that stem from the evaluation are context-based and they are meeting the information needs of the clients. So we've spent actually quite a little bit of time discussing the program logic, and one thing I want to emphasize is that we view the Olympic Torch Relay as an integral component of the Olympic Games. And what we've put on a slide is that how we conceptualize different legacies of the Olympic Games. Particularly, we've identified 3 different areas. One is infrastructure legacy, sporting legacy, and human legacies. Obviously, some of these legacies are attached to specific locations, for example, where the games were conducted, such as sites. Others, such as human legacies, more of pan-Canadian impacts, where you would see that that legacy is far-reaching in terms of its outcomes. And that's where exactly the Olympic Torch Relay initiative falls under. What we've debated, and we've come up that I think the nested logic model design would be very appropriate for this type of evaluation, just because in that way we will be able to really understand how the specific initiative contributes to the entire Olympic movement and making sure we understand the links and contributions. What we've done so far, we've developed a logic model, and we've provided detailed copies of the logic model in the folders that have been given to the judges, as well as additional copies are provided on the table. So after the presentation, if you're interested, you're more than welcome to come and get a copy. In those copies, you will see that we've identified all the different components, including the inputs, activities, outputs, short-term, long-term outcomes, as well as some of the key legacies that we've identified as stemming from this initiative. But what I've put so far on the slide is that we want to emphasize that the initiative, the Torch Relay Initiative has two major components. One of them is special project grants. As you probably have heard now, there have been a number of grants given to educational institutions and non-for-profit agencies to really involve youth in the Olympic movement, and particularly through very, very different means, including, for example, promotion materials and development of educational materials. As well as we had, for the Olympics, a number of celebration communities. That's exactly the location, the municipalities where the torch relay stopped, and there was a 2-hour celebration activities going on in those regions. So some of the core outcomes that we've identified are the following: increased community participation, including youth participation, participation from the Aboriginal communities, language minority communities, other ethnocultural communities. Some other outcomes are increased exposure display of Canadian artists and culture, increased local tourism business revenues, and increased sense of pride and belonging. And just one more area of emphasis on this is we want to highlight some of the assumptions. And what we've identified so far is two major assumptions. Number one is that this increased display of Canadian culture in local communities, it does lead to the increased pride and the sense of belonging, which we've labeled as contributing to forming national identity. And the second one is that pride is good, but it's not an end in of itself. It's really about bringing the communities together and ensure that we are all one inclusive society. So now I'm going to walk you through the evaluation questions. So obviously we've done a number of readings on the initiative. We've looked through the files. We've conducted an analysis of stakeholder needs, and based on that we have compiled a list of questions, evaluation questions and issues. We've grouped them in 3 areas. However, I just want to emphasize that these questions would be, of course, validated further with our key stakeholders, and for that reason we will be proposing assembling a consultative group that would include representatives from primary stakeholders as primary users of the evaluation, as well as secondary stakeholders. I will not walk you through the entire documents again in the folders, as well as we have additional copies of the evaluation matrix available, just to want to highlight some of the key areas here. We've grouped all the evaluation questions under 3 issues. Number 1 is relevance. We have 2 evaluation questions here. The first one is whether the Olympic torch really relevant to achieving the goals and objectives of the Vancouver Olympiad. And the second one is more specific, whether the scope and reach of the torch relay initiative was appropriate. We know that the torch relay in Canada was the greatest in the history of Olympic Games, and we want to gather some information regarding the appropriateness of such scope. And just to highlight some of the indicators, one of them is perceived opinions of the Canadian communities, and as a data source, it will be collected through community case studies, and we will talk about it in greater detail in a second. In terms of design and delivery, we've identified the following 5 questions. One of the questions is related to the components of the initiative and whether the mix of these 2 components was an appropriate mix for achieving the initiative's goals and stated outcomes. Whether there have been any alternatives to implementing the initiative, and whether the activities were implemented as planned. And for example, one of the indicators that will help us understand whether the initiative was implemented as planned will be the roll-up of performance measures, because we know as part of some of the grants that were given out to communities, they were already asked to produce final reports. So we will synthesize and analyze the information already collected to date. And obviously, as Sharon mentioned, this evaluation, one of the focus of the evaluation, the key focus is summative. We're looking at outcomes, so we have a number of questions related to this. Question one is the extent to which the initiative contributes to the goals of, and here's a list of different goals, including connecting Canadians, supporting community programming, and so forth. Whether there have been any long-term or unintended impacts of the initiative identified, as well as the question whether the resources have been utilized effectively. Again, we've identified some of the indicators. They vary in nature. For example, number of community celebrations held, whether there have been an increased tourism or business revenues. But again, some of the information will be collected through community case studies or we can collect them through stakeholder opinion or key stakeholder informant interviews. And now Catherine will speak more about the specific design.